Hello and welcome to the home kitchen on Sunday afternoon. This is what I'm taking to doing now on Sunday afternoons, is doing little cooking demonstrations. The home kitchen today has been converted to a gnocchi kitchen. Some of you who have patronized our little restaurant on Folsom Street over the years, Heirloom, have perhaps ordered a dish of gnocchi before at the restaurant. It's certainly, I think it's one of the most popular things we've ever served. It's become a little bit of a lesson to me, the whole process of gnocchi production and its appeal to people. I sort of regard gnocchi as, it's kind of like it's not exactly a holy grail, but it's an extreme example of something for a couple different reasons. One is the dish itself can be wildly satisfying if it's done well. On the other hand, gnocchi always are on the borderline of being a little bit heavy. So there's this balance that needs to be struck in terms of the production of the gnocchi. The second thing is there is nothing complicated at all about gnocchi as far as the ingredients are concerned, really as far as the recipe or the production is concerned, but it is a little labor intensive. So to that end, you know, there are these, I don't know, it's full of crossroads and not exactly paradoxes, but you know, different things coming up against each other. So I have cheated a little bit here and have I'm already into some production on certain aspects of this, but I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to tell you the recipe. I think I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, and I hope you enjoy the video. And then I'll finish the product and show you what the thing looks like. As far as mise en place is concerned, there are four very, very basic ingredients to making gnocchi. One is russet potatoes. These are pre-roasted in this case. Our recipe calls for medium russet potatoes. Sometimes russet potatoes are twice as big as this. Sometimes russet potatoes are smaller than this. We kind of talk about medium-sized russet potatoes. In addition to that, we need all-purpose flour, eggs, and microplane Parmesan cheese. Microplane Parmesan cheese, you guys probably know, is very, very fine. At the restaurant, our kitchen staff calls it snow parm because it looks a little bit like freshly fallen snow. And then that is to make the gnocchi themselves. To finish the gnocchi, or what we sometimes refer to at the restaurant as on the pickup, you know, we're taking gnocchi that have already been made and we're combining it sometimes with sausage or English peas or mushrooms or corn or you know, any number of different things can go into a pan with gnocchi, or any number of different sauces also. So I'm just going to show you one particular rendition. And as I mentioned, there are a couple different stages. Gnocchi are actually sort of, in a way, the potatoes, at least for gnocchi, are cooked 3 different times. Right, the potatoes are roasted to get them ready to be produced as gnocchi, and then we poach the gnocchi to cook the flour and the egg that's in them, and then finally we finish them, in our case with this recipe, in a non-stick pan, which I'm going to show you right now. All right, so I have already made some gnocchi that I'm going to drop into this simmering water, this boiling water. And I'll show you what happens when these come up. And while those are cooking, I'm going to show you the mixing process that involves a chef's knife, and you cut the potato right down the center. Cut the potato right down the center, and you're going to need, you know, a tablespoon. And something that is essential to this process is the kitchen tool device that is called the food mill. Food mill, you know, sometimes people use a potato ricer. It's the same idea, and the idea of that is you are pressing the innards of the russet potato through some tiny holes and making sure that there are no big pieces. Right, that's what a ricer does, and that's what a food mill does, whether you're making applesauce or gnocchi or whatever. So I'm going to go over the recipe here with you in one moment as far as proportion is concerned. I just have 2 medium-sized russet potatoes that I'm starting with, and we'll talk in 1 minute about how to adjust a recipe. You can see what happens to the potato as I'm milling this, right? It's getting pushed through those little holes, and after about 20 seconds of this, I have some milled potato in the bowl. This is, you know, a domestic food mill. We work with a big, giant industrial food mill at the restaurant. Not hugely important, you know, what you want to work with. Our gnocchi, this is one of the processes I wanted to show you. When the gnocchis begin to float, that means that they are finished. And I am spooning them out here onto an oiled sheet tray so that they're not going to stick to each other. They're all floating at the top. I sometimes liken it to when we cook gnocchi at the restaurant, you know, in a big batch, we use what's called a rondeau. A rondeau is a big braising pan, you know, it's about this big. And when all of the gnocchi start to come up to the surface, I joke sometimes that it reminds me of like an armada. Like the gnocchi are, you know, an army that are showing up. But they're very kind in the sense that they float to the surface as soon as they're done. You don't have to check them, nothing like that. Right, so these are gnocchi now that have been formed and have been poached. And here in this process, I'm going to show you a little bit about making the gnocchi dough itself. I have a milled potato of 2 potatoes. Our recipe, just so you know it, this is a moment when you might want to grab a piece of paper and a pencil. Our recipe for gnocchi at Heirloom, I'm going to divulge a big secret now, is 12 medium-sized potatoes, a full quart of all-purpose flour, a pint of microplane Parmesan cheese, and 2 eggs combined with 2 yolks. 2 eggs and 2 yolks, right, all scrambled together. So you have a slightly yolkier scrambled egg, right, and the protein in that egg yolk is going to help all of this come together. For me, I started this process, this is half of my 4 potatoes. The other half of the 4 potatoes is in the bowl. So I'm working with essentially a third, all told, between the gnocchi that are done and the dough that I'm about to make here, a third of our usual recipe, right? The usual recipe is 12, I'm starting with 4. So I'm generally looking at maybe a third of a quart, you know, almost a pint of all-purpose flour, and then a third of that scrambled egg, of that 2 plus 2, and also a third of the pint of cheese, right? I'm going to eyeball it a little bit. One of the things that is really important with making gnocchi is touch and eyeballing, and the reason for that, as I'm sure that you can understand, is that potatoes are different sizes. And you didn't, you know, I didn't trot a scale out here, so I'm not weighing grams of milled potato or anything like that. And what ends up happening, if you get into this a little bit, I'm going to dump all of the rest of this egg into this. What ends up happening is you get a little feel for how the gnocchi dough, you know, needs to feel. I'm going to add a couple of nice sized pinches of salt, and then I'm going to go in with my hands and begin to mix this. The potatoes, the cheese, the egg, and the salt. The lesson that I've given this a gnocchi lesson a few times at the restaurant over the years. The lesson that I have given is when the dough begins to come away from the bowl, which is to say it's not too wet anymore, that's kind of when you know that it's done. I wish that you could all sort of poke your fingers in this. This is what the gnocchi dough, if I press it, it gives a little bit. It's a little bit tacky. I mean, it's still up. It's definitely moist, but it's not over wet. Then I'm going to take a magical ingredient, which is called Wondra flour. Wondra is somewhat essential to this. Wondra is something that bakers use to handle dough because it makes the handling a lot easier, and it's also used sometimes to thicken sauces and soups. And now I have this, what we call a rope of gnocchi dough, and I am going to begin to work it. This is the most important part, of course, of the gnocchi production. You want to use your fingers as much as possible. And the key thing with gnocchi rolling is that you are neither rolling totally horizontally or totally vertically. When we bring people in to take a gnocchi class at the restaurant, one of the things that happens is there's a natural inclination to press down, and people get their ropes, you know, their fingerprints all in the rope because they're pressing too hard on the gnocchi rope. My favorite surface to do this on is a butcher block table, but that is not essential. It doesn't have to be. The other tool, the only thing that I failed to mention, is this thing, which is called a bench scraper, a commonly used tool in the pastry world. I'm going to cut this rope in half because the gnocchi rope becomes a lot easier to work with when it's not so long, right? And you can see this is spreading out here to a nice thinner rope. I would say, this is probably a 1/2 inch in diameter, this rope, maybe 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more Wondra over this so that the gnocchi don't stick together. And then right? There's all the gnocchi. Sprinkle a little bit of Wondra so that they don't stick together. I have a little dish waiting for me here to put the gnocchi on. And then these, as I mentioned before, these gnocchi are getting ready now to go into the simmering water, right? And they will, these will rest very, very comfortably for, an hour or longer than that. Now, we're going to take the finished gnocchi and put them together. Mise en place for this particular gnocchi that I'm going to be making today, very, very simple, spring vegetarian. I have thickly sliced cremini mushrooms. I have English peas that are first of the season for me. They're incredibly delicious. They were just blanched this morning. They're like little bursts of sugar. A Meyer lemon, some salt, some black pepper, and a little bit of butter to finish. So now I'm going to take my on my little domestic stove at home, they call this a power burner. This is my power burner. You can see the flame is pretty good. And I'm going to get this going at a nice heat. I'm going to throw a little bit of oil into the pan. Sometimes we make this dish at the restaurant with sausage. When we do make it with sausage, we put the sausage into the pan first because that is the ingredient that we want to be absolutely sure is going to be cooked through. The gnocchi at this point, the ones that came out of the water, totally cooked, pretty nicely seasoned. Could use a little bit more salt. But I'm now going to drop some of these mushrooms into this pan and let them get going. I'm going to make, a couple portions here. And then, after the mushrooms are going, I'm going to take some of my beautiful gnocchi, put them right into the pan with the mushrooms. And let those get going. They are going to pick up a little bit of color quickly. Remember, there's a little bit of egg in that dough, and that egg will help those to brown. I'm going to cut a nice slice of my Meyer lemon here. I have my English peas, I have my salt, I have my black pepper. I've mentioned this once or twice, I should mention it again. My plates at home, I've said this casually, but I shouldn't. Sarah Karsten, she makes the most beautiful bowls and plates, and I love serving guests in those plates and bowls, and I love eating from those plates and bowls. Okay, already we're starting to see, you can see a tiny little bit of color picking up, right? That color is going to become quite a lot more pronounced when we drop a little bit of butter in there. The butter is going to help them brown. As I said earlier, I thought my salt was a little bit light on the dough aspect, so this is another chance. We actually have 3 chances to salt the gnocchi. There's salt in the dough, then you salt the water that they are being poached in, and then finally on what is called the pick, right, we're going to salt it one more time. As I mentioned earlier, the peas are fully cooked. They're cooked ahead of time, they're blanched, so those don't need any more cooking. They will appreciate a little bit of heat. The mushrooms are starting to look great. I'm going to drop a little bit, maybe a half a teaspoon of butter in here. And then we're going to start to see that nice dark golden color. This is a moment when I probably would throw a handful of peas in. right? Now it's starting to look like spring in that pan. And then there are going to be 2 ingredients left. As I pick up the peas that I'm spilling on the floor. One of them is super, these are now the 2 ingredients that are left are the 2 accents, right? So far, this is just potato and egg and cheese and peas and mushrooms. And I added a little bit of salt, and now I'm going to go in with black pepper and Meyer lemon, and that's going to finish the dish. A little fresh black pepper, quite a bit of fresh black pepper. A little bit of squeeze of Meyer lemon juice. Now we have some nice color. See the mushrooms and the peas and those browning gnocchi in there? I'm going to spoon these out into my bowl. Take a little bit of my microplane cheese to garnish this. And this is quite a beautiful springtime lunch. I would like to mention and say a thanks to our friend Ben at the restaurant who actually specifically requested that I do a gnocchi demonstration. I have an ex-girlfriend also who she's probably not watching this. Gnocchi are big fans of, gnocchi are addictions for a lot of people. And I hope that you'll take a crack at this as long as you're spending time at home and more time in your kitchen. And I can't believe I almost forgot to mention, the reason that I'm making the gnocchi now is that we have Ferrando Erbeluce and Rovolote Gemme Chioso de Pomi coming up for Saturday Wine this coming Saturday night at 6 o'clock. And you can order those bottles if you want to join us and make some gnocchi ahead of time at SaturdayWine.com. And that's it for me. Love from my kitchen to yours. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll hope to see you soon. Thanks very much.